Hello and welcome to Masters of Monsters, a Shout Factory TV production. I'm Graham Skipper. I'm a horror filmmaker and I'm author of the book Godzilla, the official guide to the King of the Monsters. But more importantly, I'm a giant Godzilla fan, and I'm thrilled and honored to be sitting here with another giant Godzilla fan, the master of horror himself, John Carpenter. John, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks, man. I'm happy to be here.
So I wanted to start off with what's your Godzilla origin story? How did you first get introduced to the franchise?
Well, before you were born, I got introduced. I was a young tyke, and I saw this black and white movie called Godzilla, King of the Monsters, and I was forever in love. That was the Raymond Burr version of the original Japanese Gojira,
Sure.
and I just was really impressed. Impressed by a lot of things, but uh, Godzilla himself, the music, everything.
Yeah, I mean, what was it about it specifically that you think really sunk its teeth into you? Was it the horror of it? Were you scared? What was it about it?
It was fascinating. His giant creature destroys Tokyo. I mean, well, there's nothing better. What else is there?
It's a very good point. There's nothing better. I'm curious, when I talk to a lot of people about their relationship with Godzilla, a lot of times there's sort of a familial connection. Like for me, it was my grandpa that introduced me to the franchise. So I'm curious, how did you introduce your son Cody to Godzilla?
I introduced my son by showing him at that point it was home video, and Godzilla started coming out on home video. So I just started showing him the movies. But first of all, they're kid friendly, so there's nothing bad about them, and they're fun. And he was touched by Son of Godzilla in the very end.
Sure.
I mean, it's just everybody loves Godzilla, man. What do you? It's impossible not to. What's there to dislike about him? He's an all-purpose monster. He's can be evil, giant evil thing, destroying everything. He can be a hero. He can be an avenger. He's been all those things. So, and I think he's the longest running franchise in history. So, and what do you want?
Yeah, it's true. There's something about him that you're right. Everybody loves. You mentioned this a little bit in what you just said, but one element about these films, and especially those directed by Ishiro Honda, who I want to talk more about, is that even though these monsters are the antagonists, we identify with them and we mourn them when they die. And so I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about that as a concept within horror itself, this idea of identifying with the monster.
Well, that happens sometimes. It doesn't always happen. I don't think we all identify with Anthony Perkins in Psycho. I don't think we all mourn for him, but and particularly vicious, horrible monster. We don't mourn for his passing, but for really strong characters, strong creatures who seem to be living their own lives, and I mean, we love them. They're fun. The bad guys always fun. Always.
Sure. So speaking of Ishiro Honda, the four films that you've chosen as part of this specific series, Gojira, Rodan, Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster, and War of the Gargantuas, which, by the way, is one of my personal favorites. So I was very happy.
Great. It's the greatest. It's so
It's so
fun.
much fun. It's so much fun. But that's all those movies are from that original team of Ishiro Honda, Tomoyuki Tanaka, Eiji Tsuburaya, and of course Akira Ifukube. And so I was curious if you could talk a little bit about what is it about Ishiro Honda specifically as a director that makes him the master of the kaiju film.
Well, first of all, he was there doing it, and he did it the best. He had the most. He had a feel for these giant monsters, and uh, Honda did this incredible job with crowds. There would be a crowd scene. I don't mean running crowds screaming people, but I mean the military. There would be 20, 30 people surrounding like the whoever's talking. And he always did a great job with that. I mean, it's amazing. And he had a fluidity in his movies that I really enjoyed. And he's the king, man. He's along with Godzilla. He's the one who started it.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like whenever you watch any of those Showa era films, there's a distinct difference that you can feel when it's a Honda film versus one of the other directors. And I love all the films for sure, but yeah, there's something about, in my opinion, his approach to caring so much about the human characters in this, in these
Uh-huh.
films. Like I think
Uh-huh.
a lot of people, and I'm curious if you feel the same way. A lot of people kind of toss these movies off as they're just big monsters, whatever. The people don't matter, and I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I think that's why we care about what's happening.
Yes, I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that amazing scene in Gojira when the mom is telling her two little kids, don't worry, we'll see your father in heaven soon. It's like
I
soul crushing.
know. I know. The original Japanese version of Godzilla is the greatest. I mean, that's my favorite movie of theirs. Gojira is just fantastic. It's dark and brooding. It's melancholy, and it kind of carries this feel to it. Doom and gloom. Of course, Japan was the only country that's been nuked, so I'm sure that's how I'd feel if I was nuked.
Absolutely. Yeah, no. Yeah, it's a pretty intense film, and a film too that I hope that if anything, this sort of conversation can get people to seek out that movie. I think that a lot of people kind of think they know what Godzilla is, and but they don't.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
watch it, you know what I mean?
They don't know the specifics. They don't know the exact story, the characters. They don't get it. People just think, well, it's a bunch of Japanese extras running, big monsters crush toy buildings. I mean, but it's more than that.
So speaking of that iconic Akira Ifukube score, let's talk
Oh,
about that a little bit. Yeah, I mean, what is it about Ifukube's music that makes it so enduring?
it's just brilliant, and it just fits. He created a sound, footsteps and the growl. He's a genius. There was a laser disc back in the, I forget what year it was. I think it was 90s, showing Ifukube conducting an orchestra for the latest version of Ghidorah versus Godzilla, and it was astonishing to see. He came in and he was the maestro, and he conducted his own music, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. It's just like what is there about certain Beatles songs that just stick with you? What is there about that particular score? It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that opening moment, even before the title card comes up, just in silence, and that stark silence with the footsteps, and then that roar, and then you have that booming sound. It really, yeah, it's sort of like you can't have Jaws without the Jaws theme, right?
That's right. There you go.
Yeah. Would you say that Ifukube's music has influenced you as a music composer?
Sure. A lot of composers from the 50s and 60s have influenced me because that's when I was growing up. And that's when I was seeing all these movies, and I'm sure I'm ripping them off every day. So I love his music is infectious. It gets under your skin, and you can't forget it. You can never
Yeah.
forget it. Now there is one uh, film that is really I'm not particularly fond of. It's King Kong versus Godzilla. Oy, the ape. Oi, oi. I
That suits a little rough.
rough, and it's just it's sad. Toho had a design in the half human suit. I don't know why they didn't use something like that. That's a brilliant looking ape man, but redesigned it.
Yeah, well, and then of course you look at something like War of the Gargantuas, which to me feels more like I want to see that King Kong. Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. um, I'm curious. You know, what one of the things that I think a lot of people were sort of talking about, people don't really understand these movies until they watch them. Um, but one thing that I wish people paid more attention to is the filmmaking craft behind them. You know, like I was watching Rodan again this morning, and just to imagine the massive undertaking that it would have been to craft some of those scenes, you know, of this flying monster crashing into water, you know, bridges exploding. Can you talk a little bit as a filmmaker about the craft that goes into making these films?
And the danger, the guy in the Rodan suit fell and it crashed, literally. I guess something broke. Um, well, Rodan's a particular favorite of mine also. I love that movie.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that. There was a line for that movie in my little town. Everybody wanted to see Rodan. Well, that stuff is a real art form, and Subaraya really perfected it. He uh, it's a little like the James Bond sets in the end, or the bad guy sets. They build them; they're great, and they get blown up and destroyed. So, Subaraya builds these these cityscapes, all sorts of landscapes, and the monsters destroy them. I mean, it's incredible. So, he's he is essential to the Godzilla myth.
100%. Yeah. And for those who don't know, Eiji Tsuburaya was the special effects director on these films. So, you know, you have Ishiro Honda, who's the director, but then Tsuburaya is the one. I mean, he essentially invented the idea of men in suits fighting. So, so pretty iconic character,
Yeah.
Tsuburaya. Um, so I want to pivot a little bit. I know you are a fan of video games. I'm also a big video gamer. John, why have they not been able to make a truly great Godzilla video game?
I don't know. I don't have a clue. It's a different language. We all speak different languages, games and movies, and it's just I don't know. It's strange, but it's, they gamers sometimes screw up their own franchises. For instance, I'm a friend of Anthony Birch, who wrote Borderlands 2.
Okay, yeah.
When Borderlands 3 came out, I was so excited, but oh, what a disappointment. What a terrible disappointment. So, I mean, it's there's no we all can play the games out here and watch the movies out here, and we think we know the answer. Well, they should have done this, and why didn't they do that? But we're not inside, so
Yeah, that makes sense.
I have no clue why movies and games don't seem to mix. Not yet. I would love to take a crack at Dead Space. I think I could make it pretty
Oh,
scary. Out of it.
oh, that would be incredible. Yeah, that's one of the all-time great horror properties.
It is.
Well, speaking of, if you were in charge of like a big AAA studio Godzilla video game, what would you do?
Ah, man, I don't know. Uh, I don't know. That's the point. What's the plot? Because it's a game, so you have to have goals and characters that you play as. Uh, I don't know. See, that's the problem. What do you do with this?
Sure. Yeah, yeah. Well, it's like all the armchair quarterbacks that watch a movie and go, "I could have done that better."
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Um, so obviously there is, like you said, the Godzilla franchise is the longest running film franchise. There's 36 films, countless TV shows, comic books, manga, all that stuff. So there's a lot to talk about. Um, so if you put the original aside, what's your favorite Godzilla film?
Not counting the original
Can't,
because I
yeah,
have.
can't choose the original.
Well, I mean, I loved, like I say, I loved Rodan, and I loved War of the Gargantuas for other reasons other than it being taken very seriously. It's any movie that has a girl singing, the words get stuck in my throat, and this big creature comes and eats her and spits her out. There's nothing. I mean, you can't get better than that in life.
Yeah.
But the ones I mentioned that Ghidorah, King of the Monsters, is fun just because all the monsters are together and working together, and they're actually doing a little psychoanalysis. They're talking about why the humans don't treat them right. Well, they don't treat the humans right. That's why.
Right.
Kill them. I do like War of the Gargantuas. I can't get enough of that. Back in the 70s, there was a local channel here in Los Angeles would have a afternoon movie, and 1 week they played War of the Gargantuas over and over and over again. And I saw Russ Tamlin at an event a few years ago, and I talked to him about it. He was there to talk about the haunting, and I said, "Forget that. It's the War of the Gargantuas." Unfortunately, he just didn't respect what he was doing there. He
Yes. Yeah, from what I've read, it seems like he didn't have a very good time on that shoot.
No, when he had lived, and he got what he deserved because they didn't have a soundtrack, so he had to dub everything in.
So again, I think I know the answer is probably Rodan, but there's a huge cast of monster characters here.
Yeah.
So aside from Godzilla, would you say Rodan's your favorite, or is there another one that
would have to be? I just love him. I love his design. He's just awesome.
Yeah.
Probably Rodan or the original Rodan. He changed over the years and became sort of
Yeah, I agree. There's something about that original Rodan film where he's truly terrifying. I mean, you wouldn't think of essentially a pterodactyl as being all that scary, but there's something about what Honda does in that movie that makes him really scary.
I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah. Do you have obviously we have these 4 that you've chosen for the series, but for people that are maybe kind of new to the franchise that only know of the big main ones, is there sort of a lesser known or underrated Godzilla film that you'd like to introduce people to?
Well, Godzilla changed through the years, so the directors changed, and Subaraya was no longer doing it, and now he's a computer deal. I'm not sure I feel as the same way about that as I do about the original underrated Godzilla. Wow, underrated. I don't know about that. I don't think there's an underrated. They're all great except for the King Kong versus Godzilla mistake. But that was their biggest hit.
Right.
Yeah. Everybody wanted to see that. Well, okay, fine.
So we're coming up on time here, but I wanted to ask you, so it's no secret that you're a fan of NBA basketball. So certainly you must be familiar with the legendary meetup between Godzilla and Charles Barkley in a one-off comic in the 90s. So in your opinion, what current NBA star should be the next one to go up against Godzilla?
Oh boy. That would take a team effort. I think it wouldn't be one guy, it would be a team effort. And I mean, Shaq could do it. Shaq would take him on.
Yeah.
He'd do really well against it. But Shaq is older now. I don't know.
Yeah, well, he's almost as tall as him.
I think maybe if you had Steph Curry on your team, he could run around Godzilla and bewilder him with all the shots that are going in. Maybe somebody else could come up and kill him, but that would be tough. That would be a real tough fight.
There'll be a tough game of pickup for sure.
Yep.
Well, finally, I have one last question for you.
All right.
Godzilla versus Mecha Jamie Lee Curtis. Who wins?
Oh dear. Poor Jamie. No, well, that's no. Unfortunately, that is not a battle that's fair because Jamie Lee is not the ruthless reptilian creature that Godzilla is. Godzilla is a reptile. They call it reptile brain. It has no, it's cold-blooded. So I'm afraid Godzilla might win that.
Yeah, fair. John, thank you. This has really been a true pleasure, and not only to get to talk to someone who's inspired me throughout the years, but also just a fellow Godzilla fan.
Absolutely. And anybody who likes War of the Gargantuas is okay in my book.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and thank you all who are watching right now. Go to mastersofmonsters.com for all the info you need to watch John Carpenter's selected kaiju masterpieces, and celebrate Godzilla Day with us on November 3rd at 6 p.m. And until then, stay scary, everybody.
Just in time for Godzilla Day. Join horror master John Carpenter for a marathon of hand-picked Godzilla monster movies.
Hi there, I'm John Carpenter, the giant Godzilla fan.
Masters of Monsters, a Godzilla monster marathon, hosted by John Carpenter. Streaming live November 3rd through the 6th.